too much about that salt. Anyway, got me fired up about salt. Look at that. We've got people clearing up the pothole. And here I was ready to complain. Dolly Parton, my good friend, Dolly Parton. Forget about not making it to the grocery stores or whatever. People made it to the Ryman.
You were a New Year's resolution person, right? That's what we determined.
Yeah, why?
Oh, I was just curious how you were doing on your resolutions.
On my New Year's resolutions?
Yeah, we're 3 weeks in.
I'm glad you asked. Consistency, it's important for me. I'm in the gym 4 times a week now. Eating more consistent meals, that's also a big thing. So we're not eating at 3 a.m. I shouldn't have said that. Yeah, it happens. It happens. Not all the time, but sometimes. You really caught me there. There is still time. I mean, we're, what, 3 weeks into January? Listen, I made it in. You made it in today. That's a good day. A lot of people have been stuck in their homes for the past week. It feels even longer, actually, but it's only been a week. People have been stuck in their homes, stir crazy because the ice and the snow, it's too much. I'm pretty sure my neighborhood out in West Nashville still has a pretty thick layer of ice everywhere, and we're just now digging ourselves out. The last time we talked about just how many people, unfortunately, lost their lives because of weather-related injuries. I think the number at that time was about 6 or 7. Now the number is 27. So in a week's time, 27 Tennesseans lost their lives to weather-related injuries. And, you know, it can be any number of different things. What's wild about it is that there are other states, different parts of the country, where they saw a ton of snow, a lot of ice. But because certain areas of Tennessee really aren't prepared for that kind of thing, we may have seen a fraction of that snow, a fraction of that ice. And yet it was fatal. You know, 27 deaths. I was surprised that we didn't see some sort of plan in action, you know, snow plows immediately after the fact. Some of that happened in the more highly trafficked areas, but neighborhoods, you know, secondary roads, not so much.
We can make it pass down a road. We get to the other end, turn around, come back. If the snowing's hard, it looks like we ain't never done nothing.
I know NDOT, our Nashville Department of Transportation, does have a prioritized set of routes. It's significant enough snowfall in a short amount of time that no matter how much pre-treatment of the roads with temperatures this low, it just means that our roads are still treacherous out there.
If it's too cold for some of the, you know, salt and whatever to be used, I understand that. But I grew up in a little place called Minnesota. In Minnesota, it doesn't matter how cold it is. We found a way to use different chemicals, different solutions. I don't know what they're using out here. I can't pretend to know. What I do know is some people have thought of this and they've figured out a way to avoid these situations. I'm talking way too much about that salt. Anyway, it got me fired up about salt. I saw some of the comments online of people saying that they were having a hard enough time just trying to get out of their garages because the ice had packed up so much. But I also know that Metro Nashville has received more than 5,000 requests to remove snow from different neighborhoods across the city. And they were using the Hub Nashville app and the Hub Nashville website, which, I'll be honest, I didn't know you could do that. So we talked to Mayor Freddie O'Connell, and he said that, you know, outside of the 5,000 requests that they've been getting for all of this, they're also getting a lot of requests for, you know, patching up potholes, because as we all know, once we get some sort of accumulation, whether it's snow or, you know, a lot of rain and flooding and all that, here come the potholes. As far as what he says, they're doing their best to patch up as many potholes as possible and to clear up the roads as much as possible. Much different situation this time around, because I will say the roads are much more clear now than they have been the past few days, because we've traded ice for rain. That also means all these potholes, yeah, we see them. There's one right there. I think we always assume that someone else is going to take care of it, right? Well, if it's been there for years, you can pretty well assume that no one's done anything about it. Oh, well, look at that. We've got people clearing up the pothole. And here I was ready to complain and everything. Oh, I was ready to complain and just let it fly. Next thing you know, there they are. That's pretty wild. I don't think I've ever seen these people out here. Last year, they had 25,500 potholes that they patched up. 25,500 potholes that were patched up. I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking too. Really? Yeah, this is what the data is telling us, that they had 25,500 potholes that they patched up within city limits, just not yours, whichever one you're thinking of. There was one restaurant that we showcased or highlighted, was a Jiffy Burger. They closed for the first time in decades, let's put it that way. And it was because of the snow and ice.
We were all snowed in, the roads were so bad.
And it took me 2.5 hours to get from Beech Grove to Winchester.
I didn't get out.
You know, folks couldn't get to their businesses. Lawmakers couldn't make it into the State House. Kids couldn't get to school.
Should hope so that Monday we'll go back to school.
Thankfully, it looks like we're getting into a thaw. I mean, we forecasted weather into like what, the 50s, 60s. It's 50 outside right now, you know, with rain that's on the way. It's gonna be a much different situation toward the end of the week here.
What's your binge show? Is it still SVU?
Of course. I resent that you know that so well. You just fired it off. It is SVU. What's wrong with SVU? I'm gonna be doing that while I'm editing this. Guaranteed. It is SVU. How did you know just so quickly? Anyway. You know, the other thing that I thought was interesting, the mayor said that they are buying, or they've already purchased 37 new trucks.
Could more plows this time around have helped?
If our average annual snowfall is ticking up year over year, we do need some more snow removal equipment and procedures that make sure we cover the ground.
I'm not sure how often we can expect these types of snowstorms, but at least this sounds like we're trying to be more prepared next time around. The other thing, of course, is that some people were concerned. Do I need to clear ice from my property? You know, if I'm near a sidewalk or something like that, is that my responsibility? Good question. The short answer is, in Davidson County, yeah, we have an ordinance on the books right now that says you as the homeowner are responsible for clearing off ice or whatever it might be from your property or, you know, your area of the sidewalk. I find it interesting because I think if you're asking, you probably already know that it's your responsibility. In different parts of the country, this is a given. News Channel 5 anchor Carrie Sharp, she spoke with a personal injury attorney about what your responsibilities are for your sidewalk and, you know, if there's any ice there.
He said if there is an ordinance or your HOA bylaws require it, then do it. But he says otherwise, it's really a gray area. If someone slips and falls on your sidewalk, they will have to prove you were negligent and created a hazard.
So it does sound like if there's an ordinance in place or there are certain rules in your HOA bylaws, you are more or less responsible for what happens on those sidewalks. If you did happen to get out and about, you may have seen that our friend Dolly Parton, my good friend Dolly Parton, it was her birthday just this past weekend. All these folks showed up to sign a birthday card for our friend Dolly, and they braved the cold to do so.
I'm gonna tell her I like your dress and I like your shoes.
Just her mission and everything that she's worth in her music, you know, it's just worth it to us.
Forget about not making it to school. Forget about not making it to the grocery stores or whatever. People made it to the Ryman. Whenever you think of the most popular person from this area, it's Dolly. So, of course, I mean, I shouldn't be surprised at all.
Not only is she a smart businesswoman, but she's loving, she's caring, she's kind, and she loves everybody, and we love that about her.
Makes me think. My birthday's in June, by the way.
What things could weather not stop you from getting to?
If Boyz II Men came back in concert out here, they were here. What was it? Not last year, the year before that. Nothing was getting in my way. I was there. If we had a professional basketball team here and LeBron came into town, gotta be there. Otherwise, if like the Titans were playing a playoff game, I'm sorry guys. We are an outdoor stadium with people who are not prepared for that kind of outdoor life. I couldn't do it. Anyway, gotta love some Dolly, right? Gotta love us some Dolly. The Tennessee lawmakers are back in offices, and one of the first things that Democrats did almost immediately is that they demanded that the state's education commissioner, Lizette Reynolds, resign, like yesterday. They said that not only is she not qualified for the position, but she doesn't even meet the requirements laid out by state law to have this position. The law says that the commissioner must meet certain requirements. They must meet scientific and literary requirements as far as like their credentials. They must be qualified to teach in schools, and they must have some sort of experience in school administration. Reynolds has a degree in political science, and as far as we can tell, she has no real experience in the classroom or in school in general. Her degree is in political science, and she doesn't have a education degree.
You're talking about the commissioner of education for the state of Tennessee. I wouldn't have to expect to go and vet and view his or her resume. But unfortunately, here we are.
You might be asking yourself, why does this matter to you? Reynolds actually oversees all of the changes that would happen with education throughout Tennessee. For example, Governor Bill Lee has proposed a school voucher system that would expand throughout all 95 counties of Tennessee. That would make it so that people who can't afford to go to private school could get some sort of stipend so that they can go to these schools. Well, there's been a lot of criticism behind that program because not only does it make it so that the people who can't afford it can actually go to private school, it can actually subsidize for the people who can already afford it. And so people have said, okay, well, this voucher system would take money away from public schools around the state. And now the person who would oversee all of this happening, well, their credentials are being questioned. She would also oversee how taxpayer money is being spent on public schools. When some of my colleagues asked, why it took this long for us to even question her credentials, they said, well, they've had a lot on their plate, which I can understand to some degree because, we've had a lot going on. We've talked a lot about gun safety. We've talked a lot about gun reform. But what we haven't really focused too much attention on until recently is education. And so now we have this person who's only been, on the board for about 6 months. People are questioning whether or not they should even be doing the job.
She met with the Senate Education Committee.
Okay.
Yes.
It didn't go well?
Did not go well.
Earlier this month, Commissioner Reynolds had some difficulty answering questions from lawmakers about the controversial third-grade retention law.
My understanding is this has been a law since 2021, or right, it was passed last legislative session, correct? 2021. Okay, 2021. So this has been on the books.
Which led to some heated words from Republicans.
I almost feel that we're building this plane as we're flying it.
Okay, that's part of it then. I can imagine that some of the Democrats saw this meeting and said, something's up here. This person doesn't appear to be well educated about what this job entails or what this department entails in the first place. Okay, that makes more sense now. I thought that, I was wondering, like a lot of people were wondering, where's this coming from? I think the only other thing is Phil. News Channel 5's Phil Williams sat down with the family of Evelyn Dieckhaus. Now, Evelyn was one of the 6 people who passed away in the Covenant School shooting last year. She was 9 years old. We saw some of the things that she wrote in her notebook.
Dear Snickle Fritz, that was a nickname from a grandparent. Happy New Year. I have to give myself a New Year's pep talk, so here we go. You don't have to be like everyone else. You be you, girl. You don't have to be the best. You don't have to be perfect, ma'am. You need positive energy, girl. You can be who you want. Yourself, exclamation point. So, nice pep talk, huh? Well, bye. Love, Snickle Fritz. Herself.
I couldn't believe it. She was talking to herself, giving herself a pep talk. Oh my gosh, it was powerful. And it got me choked up a little bit because this girl, she felt like she had her whole world in front of her. She was giving herself pep talks saying, you got this, girl. you know, new year, new opportunities and everything. I think this was actually the first time that her family did an interview like this. And it was emotional.
I think we both go in and lay on her bed a lot.
3 of us will do that.
Sometimes the 3 of us.
In spirit, still a family of 4. Mike and Katie Dieckhaus, their now 12-year-old daughter, and their beloved Evelyn.
Just with our Ev watching from above now. So it's been so hard. It's so sad.
In Evelyn's face, Katie and Mike want you to see their baby.
She would just give the biggest, squeezed bear hugs.
A daughter, a little sister, another victim of America's epidemic of gun violence.
I had a chance to watch part 1 and 2 of Phil's story. There's a part 3 as well. And the focus is on not only the family, but the focus is also on what they're trying to do to keep Evelyn's legacy alive, to make sure that other families don't have to suffer in the same way that they did. They've talked to lawmakers. They've, reached out to other families across the state. They've talked to a number of different stakeholders. And from what I understand, the message has always been, okay, well, it's great that you want to show us support, but we got to do something about guns. We got to do something about access to firearms. We have to, make it tougher for people who are experiencing mental health issues to access some of these firearms. The response that they've been getting from some of these stakeholders and some of these lawmakers, it surprised me, really. And I don't know why. I guess I shouldn't be surprised, because a lot of these same people have made it very clear that they don't want any sort of gun reform.
The lawmakers who we were talking with, who had been very engaging, very emotional with us, very sorrowful, and they were, wanted to know what, they said, what can we do?
And that's when Evelyn's dad says they would often pick up on an immediate sense of discomfort.
And we said, look, we don't know what to do, but we think that something needs to be done on the side of firearms. And you just you could just feel the room change.
It was not a subject they wanted to discuss.
It certainly didn't seem like it.
They don't want to make any changes because they worry that it could infringe on someone's Second Amendment rights, or they worry that, it could upset their base, the people who got them in office in the first place. I heard, Evelyn's family say, as soon as we bring up the subject of some sort of gun reform, people kind of clam up. They're just, I understand that you guys are upset, but that's a lot of change. Well, yeah, that's what they want.
And we're trying so hard to just work in the middle and come together in the middle. And there's a lot of people that feel that way.
There are some who say, based on what we know now about the shooter, none of these laws would have made a difference. What is your answer to that?
My answer is that we're not trying to go back in time and save Evelyn. We're trying to save all these other kids that are out there.
It was heartbreaking to hear them talk about the lack of movement in all of this. We had a special session to address gun reform, and little, if anything, came out of that special session that would impact any changes for access to firearms. Governor Bill Lee proposed, a type of red flag law, which essentially meant that if I said someone else was experiencing, some sort of mental health issue, and I felt like they, were a danger to others or themselves, I could tell the courts this, and we could have some sort of hearing. They could, make their case. I can make my case, and the judge would decide if this person can have access to firearms or not. The governor went above and beyond to make sure that he did not call it a red flag law.
We all agree that dangerous, unstable individuals who intend to harm themselves or others should not have access to weapons. And that should be done in a way that requires due process and a high burden of proof, supports law enforcement, punishes false reporting, enhances mental health support, and preserves the Second Amendment for law-abiding citizens.
What I understand is that the majority of Tennesseans say that they would be okay with some sort of limitations if it means keeping the guns out of the hands of people who are not mentally fit to own them. But we're still stuck at this crossroads. We're still stuck at this point where even the families of victims are having a tough time reaching the lawmakers to explain to them why this is important, why we need some sort of limitations. There's a lot of talk that's happened, very little action. And I'm not here to say one way or another, of what should be done, but I think it's important to hear these families and actually listen to what they have to say. Because no amount of grief that we experienced matches anything like they've experienced. It's powerful stuff. And, I commend the family for trusting us to tell their story. I commend them for having the courage to not only talk about Evelyn, but to say, let's do something about this. And it really just comes down to, are we willing to listen? I think that's what I got. Before you hit stop, make sure to follow us. Like, comment, share with your friends, family, everyone in between. We want to hear feedback. We love to hear feedback. I think that's it. Till next time.